Hello! Welcome to Grammar 1. This is the first video of many which will describe the basics of grammar in relation to French 1 as I teach it. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with Grammar 1 of French 1, and we are going to go through the basics of being and describing today. First things first, we're going to talk about the basics of the French language because, of course, there are fundamental differences between languages, but there are some things that really continue throughout, right? You're going to have the same subjects, same verbs, and same adjectives. Now, not exactly the same, of course, languages don't translate, but you're going to need to continue making your language out of subjects, verbs, and adjectives to tell stories, to communicate, to do all the exciting things that we do with language. And as a result of the French language and its ways and systems, you're going to have to make them match a great deal more than you're used to. So adjectives will have to agree with the subjects a lot more than you're used to. Verbs will have to agree with the subjects a lot more than you're used to in the sense that the spellings will change more, right? Like I can, you can, we can. Can doesn't really change a whole lot. Unfortunately, in French, even if it sounds the same, often that spelling is changing frequently. And so we'll work through that here, and then whenever you're putting the language into practice, it'll start to make more sense. But of course, at first, you're going to have to make that adjustment. All right. Pronouns that we have in French basically correspond to the pronouns that we have in English. Je means I, tu means you, but it's the singular form or the informal form. And what that means, if it's singular, of course, I'm talking to just that one other person. And so it has to be just one other person I'm communicating with to use tu. And then on top of that, it has to be one other person who I'm informally connecting with. So this can be people who are equal colleagues at work, or it can be people who are younger than you. If you're working with students, for example, all of them would be tu as you work with them individually. And it's that really informal, hey, what's up, man, as well, right? You would say tu with that, with all of your friends and people that you know well, and often with like your close family as well. But there's some gray area in the middle, of course. And then there's il, which means he, elle, which means she, on, which means one. But whenever you use one as a subject, you're usually using it in kind of like a vague royal we sense. As you get more examples and more idioms, that'll make way more sense. But the most common phrase you're probably going to learn for the next few weeks where you're using it is comment dit-on, which is how does one say, right? Comment dit-on. And that's on, one. Nous is we, and nous is just that. It's for anyone and everyone, so it captures whoever is part of the we and a part of the group. Vous is a little more special. It's y'all, right? So whoever you're talking to, if you're talking to in a group, use guys, you guys, whichever version of that you use to pluralize you in your life now, you're going to use vous to pluralize you in French. Vous is also what you use with professors and with colleagues who are more advanced than you, someone who you would consider a boss, people who are older than you. If you ever have the lucky chance to meet a king or a queen, they would definitely be vous. So you get the idea. Il, it means they. Now, whenever you're talking about il, though, you're talking about a masculine they. But to be a masculine they, you really only need to have one man present. So, for example, if I'm teaching a class of all women except for one man, I always have to address them using the male form, even though the majority of the group is feminine. And that is something left over from Romance language back in the day and continues to this day. Elle, so in the past I have had a class of all women and I get to use the elle form a lot more where it was a plural women and it had to be all women in the group that I'm talking about in order to get to use elle. All right, so general nouns and gender. So I just went through a lot of, oh, this is men, this is women. Something really strange that we do in French is grammatical gender. Everything that you encounter in the reality surrounding you in this moment is a man or is a woman. And you also have to worry about plurality with grammatical gender. And so You have to think about whether the table is a man or a woman, and then you have to think about when it's a man or a woman. That may change the plural form of it as well. And so, of course, plural means that there's more than one of it, and that's pretty much it. Plurality is usually indicated by adding an S, like it is in English, so that helps, but sometimes it's an X, and sometimes it just adds extra letters, and you have to accept where we're going with that. And for male and female, it's going to have no necessarily rhyme or reason as to why a table is a woman and a blackboard is a man, but you will need to accept that as part of your grammar learning to move forward. And yeah, that is where we are on that. And to make things male or female spelling wise, there aren't a lot of rules. I'll give you as many as there are every time that we're learning new words. Un will be your masculine indicator, and une will be your female indicator. Des is your plural indicator. Those are all ways of saying a, like a and some. That would be how you would translate that back. Un, une, des. Now let's get into some verbs. They often change with every type of subject, and only some will follow patterns. I know if you've learned language before, there have been patterns that you've been given to follow often in class, and I will give you as many patterns as I can, but sometimes the French just like to abandon things. And with the most frequent verbs, you'll see that these patterns are less likely to be patterns and more likely to be unique. And there's some historical linguistic significance to that, but what matters is I'll teach you as many patterns as I can, and then we'll progress through and pick up as many along the way as we can so that you guys can say as much as possible. All right, so the first things first, we have to learn about being. Être means to be, and its conjugation is je suis, je suis. Tu es, tu es. Il est, il est. Elle est, elle est. Nous sommes. Vous êtes. Ils sont. Elles sont. And that's how those are all pronounced. I'm going to go through them once more, and I want you to try to repeat after me if you're in a space where you can do that while you're going through this. Je suis. Tu es. Il est. Elle est. Nous sommes. Vous êtes. Ils sont. Elles sont. You'll notice for that T on sont, it's like I just touch it and then I let it go. That's how a lot of letters are going to be in French at the end. There will also be the ones we completely ignore, like the S at the end of suis and the T at the end of a in the il form. And you will adjust to those over time, and I will try to help you with which letters you can pronounce at the end. They are few and far between. All right, let's move into some adjectives. So you're going to be making grammatical gender and plurality with these adjectives, and it'll be things like amusant with a female subject. We'll add an E to become amusante. And then content with a male subject, you don't add anything. It'll be content. A lot of the base forms that you'll learn will be the masculine singular. So if you're describing yourself and you're a man, things are very easy. Or if you're describing men, things are very easy. But once you get into female plurals, things get a little bit more complicated. But it's not too terrible. Just adding an E, and then it'll also change the pronunciation. And so you're indicating meaning when you change that pronunciation. A man is amusant, while a female is amusante. I would be contente, while my friend who's a man would be content. And so you get to hear that nice t at the end where you wouldn't in with females, where you wouldn't with males. And then we'll do important, which is plural masculine here. And so you would add just the S but not the E, right? This would be important. You'll notice that one doesn't change meaning necessarily by the way you're hearing it, but it does happen in the written form much more. So you'll see that more than you'll hear that, right? And then, of course, with adjectives, they generally go after the noun. There are some exceptions. Usually we go by beauty, age, goodness, and size. Those are the ones that tend to go in the front. But the reason why it really matters whether they go in the front or in the back is because some of them, get this, change meaning depending upon where you put them. And so whenever you are going to be describing things, it's important to learn their placement properly, because that will matter a little more than you anticipate, because you could be saying something is your former house instead of your ancient house, or your ancient house instead of your former house, and so on and so forth. And that is the end of everything today. Please do feel free to watch us as many times as you'd like to get all caught up. Looking forward to seeing you in class.